Canva is an online graphics and video editing platform. It was founded by Melaine Perkins in 2007. We chose to build a clone of Canva because of the challenges of a web-based graphic editors. It requires interaction with the DOM, HTML canvas, and JavaScript apart from traditional front-end tasks like routing and state management. The app we are going to build will in no way be close to the actual Canva editor, but we'll learn all the techniques required to build a JS application of all types. The tiny Canva app will be a single-page application with support for authentication using Firebase Auth, authorization using public and private routes, a create, read, update and delete UI integrated with Firebase Real-Time DB, and a graphics editor built using Fabric.js, a wrapper for HTML5 canvas. In terms of the implementation, we will use Reagent, a CLJS wrapper for React. We will learn how to manage state locally and globally using reactive atoms and Reframe. Reactive atoms is Reagent's built-in solution for local state, and Reframe is a Flux-like library for ClojureScript. For routing, we will stick to traditional React Router 4. This mix showcases the power of Clojure in various conditions, like consuming JS libraries and integrating with React. In the process of building this app, we'll learn more about Clojure's dev workflow, its API, Paredit, and the REPL. In the end, we will learn about advanced concepts like code splitting, production bundles, and unit testing. Here's a preview of what you can expect. We will have a login screen with error management that is connected to Firebase Auth. Once you log in, you will be presented with a dashboard where you can create new graphics and delete existing graphics. You can also log out. Our editor will have the ability to add shapes, multiple types of text, and change the background color of the canvas. It will also allow us to export PNGs or SVGs or save the editor state to Firebase DB. We will also create options to edit individual element properties like width, height, color, etc. By the end of this module, you will have a fully functional application. You'll also have practical experience about how things fit in. We hope that the app built in this module will serve as a starting point for your own Clojure projects.
Programming languages need a mechanism to be converted from source files to something that can be executed. In compiled languages like C or C++, the source code is first converted to assembly code, then to object code, and then some linker magic is used to create an executable. Languages like Java operate at a higher level of abstraction. Instead of worrying about how the assembly code would be computed, the Java source code is compiled to bytecode. This bytecode can then be run on JVM that takes care of the lower level abstractions. Another set of languages like CoffeeScript are just converted from one syntax to another. Clojure is a hosted language. It targets the virtual machines of other languages. In Java land, Clojure source code is converted to .class files which can run on top of any JVM. In JavaScript land, Clojure is transpiled to CommonJS or ESM modules similar to PureScript or ReasonML. As of now, there are 3 official ports for Clojure. Clojure without a suffix that targets the JVM, Clojure Script that targets JavaScript, and Clojure CLR that targets the common language runtime. Apart from the official ports, there are many community ports that can target other runtimes. But the community ports are not always feature complete. Clojure provides constructs to interact with the host language. You can use any library in the host ecosystem and most of the language features available at the host. This means that when you're writing Clojure script, you have access to JavaScript promises, and when you're writing Clojure, you have access to Java's async model. It is also possible to write code that targets multiple runtimes at once. This can be achieved using the concept of reader conditionals and Clojure common files. This is an advanced topic and we will not delve into this at the moment. In conclusion, Clojure runs on top of other language VMs. It lets you tap into existing ecosystems like NPM and Maven. You need to learn it just once and use the same API to target various runtimes, and you can transparently access most of the host features. Clojure is considered to be an expressive language, and one of the reasons behind this is its syntax and native data types. If you don't come from a Lisp background, you might find it hard to read Clojure code at first. But we are in luck today because Clojure has just one syntactical rule. Elements inside parentheses are elements of a list. The first element of the list is the function or the operation that you want to execute, and all other elements are the arguments to this operation. This operation can be a function, this operation can be a macro, or this operation can be something else that we'll see later. All you need to remember is that the first element of the list is the operation and all other elements are arguments to that operation. Let us start with the basic data types. I highly recommend that you start the REPL and follow along. We have numbers, we have floats, and we have ratios for non-terminating decimals. Strings are defined using double quotes, and booleans can be true or false. The string function can be used to cast a variable to string and also to concatenate two strings together. The type function can be used to check the type of any variable. You would observe that the type of 1 is Java lang number and the type of a ratio is Clojure lang ratio. This tells us that numbers in Clojure are just Java numbers, whereas ratios are Clojure specific. Clojure has no support for infix operations. If you try to use an operator between two operands like 1 plus 2 and try to execute it in the REPL, you will get an error. All algebraic operations are defined as functions. The plus function can be called with 2 or more arguments. Similarly, the product function can also be called using 2 or more arguments. Clojure core ships with all the algebraic functions that you would expect, like quotient, remainder, and all others. Inc or increment can be used to add 1 to any number. Similarly, dic or decrement can be used to remove 1 from any number. Algebraic comparisons are also available as functions, and all comparisons can take 2 or more arguments. In fact, the comparison operator and most algebraic operators can work with just one argument. Clojure code is organized into namespaces. You can think of a namespace as an address for every file. It is similar to JavaScript module or PHP namespaces. The thing to note here is that when you start a REPL, you are in the user namespace by default. We can change this namespace and we'll get to this later. The def macro can be used to define variables in a namespace. Here we defined the age variable in the user namespace. The literal age is now a symbol. A symbol is a string that points to another value. Like age points to the value 20. A concept similar to symbols is keywords. Where symbols point to another value, keywords point to themselves. Keywords can be defined using a colon prefix, and you can define namespace qualified keywords using double colons. Keywords in Clojure are very similar to keywords in Ruby, and they are particularly suited to define keys for maps, enumerations, or variables that would never change, like roles in a web-based application. Collections in Clojure is an abstract type that implements the iSequence interface. All compound data structures like lists, vectors, maps, and sets are collections. Collections have a common set of functions that apply across data structures and some data structure specific functions. And all the operations that manipulate a collection in any way are immutable. Clojure has no support for mutating a data structure after it is defined. List in Clojure is an implementation of the linked list algorithm. Linked lists are optimized for traversal. A list can be defined using the list operation with any number of arguments, or using the literal form with a single quote followed by parentheses. We need this single quote because if we try to define a list without it, Clojure will consider the list to be a function call where the first element is the operation and all other elements are the arguments to that operation. In our case, the first element is not a valid operation. If you try to execute this code, you will get an error saying that 1 does not implement the IFN interface, which in plain words means that 1 is not a function and hence cannot be called. There are many functions that you can use to operate on a list. We will try a few of them in this screencast, but I highly recommend that you read the lesson and test all the functions listed. The list predicate, that is a list with a question mark, can be used to figure out if a variable is a list. Conventionally, functions ending with a question mark are considered to be predicates. The count function can be used to count the number of elements in a list. Now count is a sequence function, which means that it will work for lists, for vectors, for maps, and even for sets. The conj function can be used to append an element at the top of the list. Let's append 9 to the list 1, 3. The conj function is immutable, which means that the original list was never modified, but a new copy was created with the extra element 9. In terms of implementation, a view was created on the original list and the elements were not copied to a new physical location. But from the point of view of a developer, this operation was immutable. Vectors are conceptually similar to lists, but in terms of implementation, they are an array list and not a linked list. An array list is a list where each element has an index. This makes vectors efficient for lookups. All these sequence functions like count and conj will work with vectors because vectors also implement the iSequence interface. To define a new vector, we can use the vector function, or we can use the literal form and just use square brackets. And as you have guessed, there is also a predicate function to figure out if a variable is vector. Vectors implement the IFN interface as well, which means that vectors are callable as functions. They accept an argument, which is the index that you want to look up, and return the value of the element at that index. If the index is out of bounds, an exception is raised. This should give you more insight into how Clojure is built up as a language. For something to be a sequence, it needs to implement the ISEQ interface. For something to be a function, it needs to implement the IFN interface. Maps are a collection of key value pairs and can be defined using the literal form of curly brackets. The keys in a map are generally a keyword. Maps also implement the ISEQ interface, which means that all sequence functions like count and conj will work for maps. ASOC, or short for associate, is a map-specific function that adds one or more key value pairs to a map. Similarly, DSOC removes one or more key value pairs from the map. The function keys and vals can be used to get all the keys or all the values of a map as a list, and the function get can be used to look up certain keys in a map. By default, the maps are not sorted, but it is possible to create sort orders depending on the keys or values or a combination. Sets are unordered collection of elements that can be defined using the literal form hash followed by curly brackets, or also using the operation set. There are many set-specific functions like union, intersection, difference, which are defined in the Clojure set namespace. So, in order to access them, you need to require the Clojure set namespace. All other functions that we have used so far are a part of the Clojure core namespace, which is required by default. We can use the require macro to require the set specific functions. Don't worry if this syntax doesn't make sense. We'll study this in more detail later in this course. After you have required these functions, you can execute them just like other functions. Custom functions can be defined using the define macro. The define macro accepts a function name, a vector of arguments, and the function body. There is no need to specify return values explicitly because the last element of the list is returned by default. Comments can be defined using a semicolon. The convention is to use 2 semicolons for a full line comment and 1 semicolon for an inline comment. We can also use the comment macro to define multi-line comments that contain code. This is generally called a rich comment, and we'll study about this later in this course. Commas are read as white spaces. You don't really need to add them, but you can if you wish. This brings us to the concept of homoiconicity. In C family languages like JavaScript, the syntax used for defining data structures is remarkably different from the syntax used for defining functions. In Clojure, the same literal forms are used to define data as well as code. On the left you see a list of 3 numbers, a vector of 2 elements, and a function definition which is a combination of list and vectors. And on the right hand side you can see JavaScript code where the syntax for defining data is different from the syntax for defining functions. In conclusion, Clojure affords us all the data types that we'd expect from a language. Some data types like numbers and strings are just host data types, whereas some others like ratios are Clojure specific data types. We also learned that collections are abstract and are built around the I-sequence protocol. We then studied the homoiconic nature of Clojure to conclude that code is data and data is code. Before you proceed to the next chapter, I recommend that you read the lesson text and practice all the functions mentioned in there. This chapter just scratches the surface of the extent of Clojure's API. ClojureDocs.org is a good community resource to learn more about the API and functions available in the Clojure core. In the last chapter, we studied about Clojure's syntax. In this chapter, I'll try to convince you that Clojure does not have a syntax. I know it sounds a little odd, but please bear with me for a few minutes and things will make sense. Consider this simple JavaScript if condition. The keywords if and else and the curly brackets have to be in specific positions for this code to execute properly. This constitutes the syntax of the language. The same condition in Clojure can be written as follows. On the surface, the two might look similar, but there are many underlying differences. In JavaScript, the positioning of the keywords if and else and the curly brackets are a part of the syntax. Other operations like defining a function, defining a try-catch block, defining a variable will have a different syntax in JavaScript. But in Clojure, if is just a function call, and so is every other operation you can perform. The only rule that you need to keep in mind is that a list starts with parentheses and the first element of the list is an operation and all other elements are the arguments to that operation. In that sense, Clojure is way more expressive than a C family language. We can rewrite the if conditional in Clojure as follows. Notice how we moved the function if inside the print function. Now you might be wondering that you can do the same thing in JavaScript using the ternary operator. That's a great observation, but we'd like to point out that the ternary operator is an additional piece of syntax. With Clojure, it was just a function call, but ternary operator is an escape hook. It is not as extensible as composing functions would be. If JavaScript was as expressive as Clojure, then something like this would have been possible, but it is not. The keywords if and else only work in certain positions. You can't compose them freely. Clojure functions can be nested at multiple levels, and as long as your code is a valid list. There is no other syntactical rule that you need to follow. Hence, syntaxlessness. Clojure gives you the power to tap into existing ecosystems, but to wield that power, we need a build tool. There are many build tools available, and we'll walk through the famous ones, understanding their pros and cons. The oldest and probably the most mature is Leiningen, or Line in short. It helps you manage dependencies and project-specific tasks similar to NPM scripts. It is particularly suited to JVM dependencies, but can also be modified to work with JavaScript dependencies from the CLJS.js repo. Leiningen has built-in support to package your app into jar files or JavaScript files, and it can also run a REPL for you. The only downside is that Leiningen runs one JVM process for every application. If you have a large project with multiple sub-applications, you'll have to run one JVM instance to run each application. Boot is similar to Line in scope, with the added advantage that it only runs one JVM for multiple applications. With Boot, you might have 15 applications running, but only one instance of the JVM will be used. Boot configuration is more verbose than Leiningen, and some people prefer it because of that. The official solution to manage dependencies is deps CLI. It is not as mature or as old as Boot or Line, but it is the recommended way going forward. It is focused on managing JVM dependencies, but can also be used with JavaScript. Unlike Leiningen or Boot, deps CLI is more of a do-it-yourself solution. Deps CLI give you the ability to pick your components and mix and match them as you see fit. The CLJ command that we have been using so far is a part of deps CLI. Line, Boot and deps are more focused on the JVM aspect of Clojure, but Shadow CLJS is optimized for JavaScript. Shadow lets you seamlessly interop with NPM packages. You can yarn install any package from NPM as you would in a JavaScript project and import it in your Clojure code. Just like Line, Shadow also helps you package your application and run a REPL, and along with that, it also has some JavaScript specific development tools that help with hot module reloading, code splitting and dynamic imports. There also exists an extension for Line called Figwheel that adapts Leiningen for JavaScript development. It introduces features like hot module reloading, code splitting, and a few other things to Leiningen. Although there are many build tools to choose from depending on the runtime you want to target, the basic principles remain the same. If you get a hang of one build tool, you can easily use all others. On the JVM side, you cannot go wrong with either of the three options, but on JavaScript side, we recommend that you use Shadow. In the last few lessons, we learned about the language and build tools. We are now ready to create our first project. You might find typing out S expressions odd at first, but don't worry. We'll soon learn how to use ParEdit, a tool to help manage S expressions. All projects start with a configuration file. The name and syntax of this file is different for different build tools. However, the ideas remain the same. If you understand one build tool, you can easily use all others. For Shadow CLJS or Shadow, the file is called shadowcljs.edn. EDN stands for Extensible Data Notation. It's a format similar to JSON. Shadow projects are a mix of NPM and ClojureScript. Hence, you'll need a package JSON file as well. This allows us to install NPM packages directly. There are multiple tools to scaffold your project, but to gain insight into how things work, we'll scaffold the Shadow project manually. Getting used to Shadow configuration will help us later when we start using advanced features like code splitting. After we walk through setting up projects manually, we'll learn about the tools that can help automate this process. Let's create an empty directory. This directory will hold our project. In our case, the name is going to be first project. The name of the topmost directory is conventionally kebab cased. Most Clojure libraries hosted on Clojars follow this convention. Now let's go inside this directory and create the Shadow configuration file. You can now open this folder in an editor of your choice and we can start building our initial configuration. Source paths literally specify the directories your source code lives in. In our example, we have added two directories, src and resources. The src or source folder is for ClojureScript code, whereas the resources folder holds supporting assets like configuration files, images, style sheets, etc. These names could be anything, however, having an src folder is a very strong convention. The directory named resources is used by Java's IO module, and by extension, it is also used by Clojure's IO module. It is highly recommended to use conventional names until and unless you know what you are doing. Some large projects might have code in multiple dialects of Clojure. One popular combination is ClojureScript on the front end and Clojure on the back end. In cases where multiple dialects exist simultaneously, the src path could be set to src_cljs and src_clj. Again, this is just a convention. If you follow the convention, your Clojure code goes to src_clj folder and ClojureScript code goes to src_cljs folder. However, you can break the convention if you wish to. It is legal to define the source path as src_clj and put ClojureScript code inside that folder. The build tool will not complain as long as the file exists. We have defined the source paths, but these folders do not exist yet. Let's create them. The dependencies key value pair is used to define the JVM dependencies of the project. You might be wondering why Shadow, a build tool for ClojureScript, has support for JVM dependencies. This is because you can write Clojure macros in JVM Clojure and invoke them in ClojureScript. It also helps with libraries that are written in both Clojure and ClojureScript and are distributed via Maven or Clojars. Shadow also has support for NPM dependencies, but those go to the standard package.json file, which we'll create in a while. The dependencies key in the case of Shadow refers to JVM dependencies hosted on Maven. Since we don't have any external library for our first project, the value is an empty vector. In case we had some dependencies, each element of the vector would be a two-element vector where the first element is the name of the package and second element is the version number. NREPL stands for network repel. The term repel stands for read, eval, print and loop. Repel is often used interchangeably with the term shell, and in some sense they are similar, but in terms of implementation, the Python shell, for example, is very different from the Clojure repel. You have seen a repel already. When you type CLJ in your terminal, you start the default Clojure repel in the user namespace. This repel is shipped with deps CLI. Shadow too ships with a repel, so does every other build tool. Shadow's repel runs as a service and can be connected to via an interface. In most cases, the text editor connects to this repel. This connection offers multiple IDE-like features. The NREPL aspect of Clojure applies only to Lisps and might not make sense immediately, but it's one of the tools that make Clojure development rapid. It is so important that we have dedicated a full chapter to it. For now, we just need to know that the example configuration will start the NREPL on port 9000 and any capable client can connect to it. Do you remember installing the NREPL packages for your editor? Calva for VS Code, Cursive for IntelliJ and Cider for Emacs? These are the clients that will connect to the NREPL. Shadow can be used to target multiple JavaScript outputs. You can produce code suitable to be shipped as an NPM module, code suitable to be used in a browser, or something else. The builds option help you configure just that. In our example, we use Shadow to produce code targeting the Node runtime, that is Node script. We also configured to output the final build file to build nodescript/code.js. Shadow will automatically create this directory if it doesn't exist. The node script target is a good option for tasks that need to run from the command line. The main keyword takes a namespace qualified function and executes it when the script is run in the node runtime. NSQualified is just a fancy way to refer to a function defined in a specific namespace. The output produced by Shadow can be used directly by node. We can call the output script like so. The arguments passed in the CLI will be passed to the main function defined in Shadow configuration. Shadow's build mechanism is versatile and our configuration is just the tip of the iceberg. We will explore this more as our projects grow in complexity. We configured Shadow's main, but we haven't created the namespace yet. Let's create the file to hold this namespace and define the main function in it. There are some rules to determine the location of this file, and we will get to them in a moment. For now, we just need to create a file named core.cljs in src/first project directory. The ns operation lets you define a new namespace. There are certain rules that we need to keep in mind while defining namespaces. For now, we just need to know that the namespace for this file is firstproject.core. Namespaces let you refer and import functionality defined in other files. In our config, we refer to the main function. If we had another namespace, say firstproject.utils, we can use the functions defined there in the core namespace by using the require argument for this macro. With the require statement, any function x defined in firstprojects.utils will be available as u.x in the firstproject.core namespace. Namespaces are closely connected to source paths. They also need to follow some naming rules. In our example, when we refer to firstproject.core/main, we are referring to a directory named first_project that exists on the source path, i.e. at src/firstproject. We also expect a file named core.cljs that exists inside the first project directory and a function named main defined in core.cljs file. The namespace definition using the ns function uses kebab case, but the respective file or folder uses snake case. Here are some examples of namespaces and their respective paths on disk. The namespacing rules for namespace are common for all build tools. Since namespaces expect a file to exist on a particular path, can you think of another location that is a valid path for firstproject.core? If you thought resources/firstproject/core.cljs, you are right. The build tools just need the code to be available on the source path. Since resources is a source path, Shadow won't complain. However, this will break the convention of using src directory for source code and confuse everyone on your team, so please don't do it. We have defined the namespace already. Now let us also define the main function. This main function will take a variable number of arguments and just return the string hello world. The ampersand character in the argument list denotes the fact that this function can accept any number of arguments. Now let's set up the package.json and a JavaScript project. Shadow allows you to import npm modules directly. In fact, Shadow itself is distributed as an npm module. We can use the yarn init or npm init command to create a package.json for us. Once done, we can install Shadow by using yarn add shadowcljs or npm install shadowcljs. At the time of recording this video, the latest stable version is 2.10.15. To check the installation, you can pull up Shadow's help menu and you should be presented with a list of API methods. In this lesson, we learned how to set up a Shadow project from scratch. We walked through some Shadow configuration parameters and understood the rules of namespacing. We also set up an npm project and installed Shadow. In the next chapter, we learn more about Shadow's API and run our first project. Shadow offers many helpers to compile and develop your app, but we only need to care about 3 methods. These are compile, watch, and release. Compile and watch are similar in scope. Both of them convert ClojureScript code to JavaScript code based on the build target. The only difference is that watch recompiles each time a file on source path changes. The JavaScript code produced by both compile and watch is inspectable. That means it is not uglified or minified and can be read by you. The release method bundles the code for production. It applies advanced optimizations, minification, and uglification. ClojureScript relies on Google's Clojure compiler, GCP, to transform CLJS to JavaScript. GCP is Google's in-house alternative for Webpack and was open sourced over 10 years ago. All major Google apps including Gmail rely on GCP. We are ready to start our first build. We have set up our configuration, installed Shadow, and have created our namespace. Our main function is designed to print Hello World. To start Shadow Watch, we need to issue the watch command with a build target. This can be done using yarn shadow cljs watch script. Script is the build that we have defined in Shadow configuration. The colon before script is optional. When you run the watch command for the first time, Shadow will install the required dependencies and start a server. You can see that Shadow compiled 76 files and started an nrepel on port 9000. It also started a server on port 9630. We have learnt about nrepel already. This other server is a web-based dashboard that gives you an overview of the builds and runtimes. At this point, your ClojureScript code is compiled to a node script in build nodescript/core.js. You can inspect this code as it's just plain JavaScript, but it might not make sense. The NodeScript target bundles everything into a single file, which allows for easy distribution at the cost of readability. However, we can simply run the compiled NodeScript. You might notice that the process doesn't terminate. This is because Shadow is in watch mode. Watch mode allows for some hooks that can execute your code in node environment each time you make a change. For now, we can just close this process by pressing Ctrl+C or Command+C. Now let's go ahead and change core's CLJS. Let's print Hello World 2 instead of just Hello World. You should notice that as soon as you save the file, Shadow rebuilds the script. So far, the scripts we have built with Watch were for development environment. The release command builds the script in production mode. It uglifies, minifies, and applies optimizations to JavaScript output. To build our script target, we can run the release command with script argument. Again, the colon is optional. If you try and run the script in Node again, the process will terminate. This is because the script was packaged for production use. Typing the entire build command can sometimes feel tedious. It's my personal practice to add these commands to npm scripts so they become easier to use. We can add the following shorthands to package JSON's script configuration. Now, instead of using yarn shadow watch script, we can use yarn w:\script, which is more pleasant than the original version. Setting up a new ClojureScript project with Shadow is simple but not easy. You need to create a configuration, set up a directory structure, and set up some build targets. Create CLJS app can help ease this process. This tool is similar in scope to Create React app. To create a new project with the tool, you can use it with yarn as yarn create CLJS app and name of the project. This will create a shadow config, an npm config, install all the dependencies, create a directory structure, and also set up a structure for tests for you. In the default configuration, the project created by Create CLJS app targets the browser and includes Reagent, a ClojureScript wrapper for React. Our example so far only used the NodeScript target. The other notable difference is usage of a public directory instead of resources. This is a good way to get started once you understand the ecosystem and want to bootstrap projects quickly. The app generated using Create CLJS app is a React application and runs in the browser. It uses Reagent under the hood and sets up a basic SPA. If you run yarn start in your newly minted second project, Shadow will start a dev server for you on port 3000 and nrepel on port 3333, assuming you didn't change any config. Now, if you navigate to localhost 3000, you'd see a simple React component. The following configuration is responsible for compiling the app to run in the browser. Feel free to poke around the source and check app.core/main function. We will walk through the configuration next, but learn about code in later sections. The keyword browser as target requests Shadow to produce JavaScript code suitable for running in a browser. Shadow relies on GCP, which can produce ES3, ES5, ES6, and a few other versions of browser-ready JavaScript. The output directory is where all your compiled files reside. Unlike the node script target, where we specify an output file, the browser target needs us to specify a directory because more than one files are created. The asset path defines the location of compiled resources in relation to the web server. For example, if your web server is configured to serve a static website on https example.com from root example.com public and you compiled your code to public/js directory, then your asset path relative to the web server is /js. If a file called public index.html needs to include a compiled script, then it can do so at example.com/js/main.js. Modules configuration is a map of outputs that need to be produced. This helps with code splitting. In the example above, we have configured Shadow to generate a single module main. This will lead to generation of a file called main.js in the output directory. The initfn option specifies a namespace qualified function that should run as soon as the module is loaded. For example, in a React app, we might want to call render as soon as the app loads. As the size of your app grows, you can split your output into multiple modules. Modules can also depend on each other. Shadow will compute the dependency graph and will try to push most code to the edges. The module configuration will become more easy to grasp as we use it. For now, just consider it as an option that puts your code into different baskets. Browser-based JavaScript needs some HTML. It might not be evident from the configuration, but if you check the public folder generated by create_cljs app, you'd find an index.html file. This file includes main.js, which was generated as a result of main module configuration. Did you notice the HTTP server running on port 3000? This was the courtesy of dev http shadow config. Dev http takes a port and a root directory and serves the content of that directory with index.html as the entry point. This ties the entire process in a loop. You start watching the app target using yarn start. Shadow compiles CLJS code to JavaScript and outputs to public.js directory. Dev server serves this directory on port 3000. We open the browser to check the output, and when you make changes, Shadow recompiles your application. In conclusion, we ran our first application and understood Shadow's fundamental APIs. We learned about automating the bootstrap process using create Shadow CLJS app and studied Shadow's browser target. We also saw an auto-generated React application built using Reagent and established a dev workflow to tie everything together. According to the official Clojure docs, the REPL is a user interface to your program. Clojure is a hosted language. In our case, Clojure script is hosted on JavaScript. This means that at a given moment of time, there are two sets of code available: CLJS code that we wrote and JS code that the build tool produced. To test our code, we need the JS version to run, but modifications are made to the CLJS version. The REPL provides a bidirectional bridge between these two realms. It lets you control execution of code in JavaScript realm without leaving the Clojure script realm. Inline evaluation is a niche concept. Instead of building the concept bottoms up, let's see the final product and tear it top down. Notice how we evaluate the code inline. Inline evaluation leverages the nREPL to execute code inline. This lets us develop and debug functions without leaving the editor. Inline eval is not limited to core functions. In the demo, we also defined a new function using the defen macro and called it inline. You can also evaluate third-party libraries, refer to inline docs, and a lot more. Something like React's hot reload compiles your code each time you save, so the newer version is available in your browser. Inline evaluation lets you completely bypass the browser or your runtime and lets you evaluate your code right in your editor. Our first project was configured to run as a Node script, so the inline execution of the code happens in Node environment. And the REPL serves as a bridge. In this chapter, we'll connect the REPL to your editor. We have introduced multiple tools in our process so far. Let's see how everything fits in the big picture. At step 0, you write ClojureScript code in your text editor. We already have the source for first project. ShadowWatch converts your CLJS code to valid JavaScript. You can execute a command that will run JS code in Node environment as we did earlier, and the Node runtime executes the code and doesn't exit while Shadow is in watch mode. The Node script did not exit because the REPL needs this runtime for inline evaluation. The REPL is the bridge between CLJS source and the runtime. When Shadow converts your code to be ready for the runtime, the REPL can initiate the execution, update the functionality without full rebuilds, and get the output from the runtime back to the editor. This is why the REPL is a user interface for your program. If you followed the steps in the last section, you would have your source open in your editor, ShadowWatch in a terminal, and Node script running in another terminal. We have configured nREPL to run on port 9000, so let's connect our editor to it. We will talk about multiple editors, but you only need to follow the selection that applies to you. In VS Code, we first need to open the project folder, and on the bottom left corner, you should see a button for nREPL with status disconnected. If you don't see this button, refer to the Getting Started section and ensure that your editor is set up correctly. Click on the nREPL button and click Connect to Running REPL Server in Project. You can also type Ctrl-Shift-P or Command-Shift-P and then search for Calva Connect to Running REPL Server in Project. In the choice of REPLs, choose Shadow CLJS REPL. You'll be asked for a host and a port. Most probably, Calva will read your config and autofill this information. If that doesn't happen, enter localhost 9000. We configured this port for REPL in Shadow config. And in the choice of builds, choose script. You should see a Calva window with the message REPL connected. The nREPL status on the bottom left of your editor will also turn golden yellow, indicating the connection was successful. To verify the connection, open firstproject.code namespace and type a simple expression, say product45. Now bring your cursor at the end of this expression and press Ctrl-Shift-P or Command-Shift-P. In the command menu, search for Calva Evaluate Current Form and hit enter. You should see the result flash at the end of your cursor. Next, try and print a message to your runtime, i.e. the Node script running in the terminal. Evaluate println high. This should flash nil in your editor, but if you go and check your terminal, you would see the keyword high printed. Calling inline eval with the command menu each time might be tedious. We recommend that you assign the shortcut Ctrl-Xe or Command-Xe to run this command. Emacs need an extra dependency in your project in order for the Cider integration to work. Add the Cider nREPL dependency to your Shadow config as follows. You will need to restart ShadowWatch after saving changes to the config. You will also need to restart the Node process running in the other terminal. To connect to the nREPL, we can call metax cider connect and in the prompt enter localhost 9000. A Cider buffer should open up with some information about Cider and nREPL. In the prompt user, we can shift to the script REPL using Shadow's REPL function. After your REPL is connected, we can go back to firstproject.core and enable Cider mode using metax cider mode. And to verify the connection, we can execute an expression, say product 54. To evaluate an expression inline, we can bring the cursor to the end of the form and use the shortcut CXE. Let's try executing another expression, println high. This should flash nil in your editor, but if you go back to the terminal running the node script, you would see the keyword high printed on your console. When you evaluate a form, your editor passes it to the REPL. The REPL figures out the relevant JavaScript code that should be run and executes it in the connected runtime. In our case, that runtime is Node. The code is executed and any returned values are flashed inline in the editor. When we printed a message, our output went to stdout, that is our terminal. The inline eval flashed nil because println does not return anything. The REPL provides an excellent feedback loop but can also lead to some problems. It's a tool to aid your development process. It's not a substitute for your development process. One of the problems that the REPL leads to is hanging code. We entered some arbitrary code in firstproject.code namespace. It's fine right now, but imagine you ship this code to production. The program will evaluate the multiplication and the print function each time this namespace loads. To avoid this hanging code problem, it's always a good idea to use the comment macro for code that we intend to run only in the REPL. The comment function is an alternate to the literate form of comments, i.e. the ones that start with semicolon. This type of comment that holds code to be run exclusively at development time is also known as a rich comment. You can make progress in the REPL, but at the end of the day, your program needs to run somewhere else. Getting something working in the REPL is not the same as being production ready. Think of the REPL as an inspection tool. It really shines when you're working with pure functions. As we progress in this course and start writing more code, we will understand how to best leverage the REPL. You should also make it a habit of saving your files. With the REPL, you can define functions in a namespace and run them without actually saving the file. This means when your REPL restarts, the function might not be available and your code might break. You might have noticed the slow startup time and the added burden of connecting to nREPL. It's a common practice in Clojure world to never kill the watch process and the REPL session. This way, whenever you sit down to work, your toolkit will be ready. In this chapter, we learnt about the REPL and how to evaluate code inline. We built a mental model for REPL and studied some of its advantages and shortcomings.